Hey there, curious minds. Welcome back to Curell Case Files, the home for untold stories, eerie mysteries, and the chilling pursuit of truth. You ever get that spine-tingling chill while listening to a true crime podcast, the kind that makes you glance over your shoulder or double-check your locks at night? But here's a thought. What if your favorite podcast episode wasn't just entertainment? What if it held the key to cracking a real murder case? Sounds wild, right? But it's real. Some true crime podcasts have actually helped solve cases that once seemed lost to time. That's right, justice delivered through the power of storytelling and sound waves. In this special edition, we're diving deep into the podcasts that shook the system, revealed hidden truths. Stick around, because by the end, you might just start wondering, could your next listen lead to a breakthrough? Could you become part of the story? Let's rewind a bit and see how this all started. True crime podcasts didn't just happen, they exploded. What began as a niche corner of the internet quickly became a global phenomenon. As of 2023, over 2 million podcasts were online. And guess what? True crime is consistently among the top 5 genres worldwide. That's not a fluke, that's a movement. Why are we so hooked? It's that perfect cocktail: suspense, drama, a hint of horror, and all of it real. These stories tap into something primal, that human obsession with justice, with understanding the darkness beneath the surface. Whether you're on your commute or doing dishes, you're suddenly inside the mind of a killer or the heart of a victim. From the game-changing serial to indie gems with cult followings, true crime podcasts offer immersive storytelling combined with real-world stakes. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Listeners aren't just bystanders anymore. Some people hit play, hear a clue, and suddenly find themselves contacting authorities, submitting tips, even becoming private investigators from their living room. Let's get into the mechanics, how these podcasts actually build their stories. You see, great true crime storytelling isn't just reading facts, it's a meticulous, multi-layered craft. It starts with deep investigative research, sometimes more rigorous than what law enforcement has time to conduct. We're talking digging into public records, filing FOIA requests, analyzing court transcripts, talking to witnesses, victims' families, and even retired detectives who worked the case. Then comes the art of narrative weaving. The best shows know how to build suspense without exploiting tragedy, how to invite listeners into the investigation with empathy and nuance. They structure episodes like puzzle pieces, each one revealing more of the picture until click, something falls into place. And then there's community engagement, which is the real X factor. Hosts today are turning their audiences into collaborators. They encourage theories, crowdsource documents, and use social media as a detective's toolkit. Private Facebook groups, Reddit threads, and fan-run tip lines are just a few ways everyday people contribute real insight. Add immersive editing, eerie background scores, voice modulation for interviews, and even live crime scene audio when available, and you've got a sensory experience that makes you feel like you're in the interrogation room. It's no wonder that some listeners spot inconsistencies or make connections others missed. With thousands of eyes and ears tuned in, it only takes one sharp mind to change the course of a case. Now, let's get to the real meat: cases that changed course because of a podcast. These stories are not just astonishing, they're history in the making. First up, the Tara Grinstead case. A beloved teacher and beauty queen, she vanished in 2005, in Ocilla, Georgia. The case went ice cold, until 2016, when Payne Lindsay launched Up and Vanished. His podcast brought the dusty case into the light. His interviews, theories, and sheer persistence stirred local memories, and suddenly, people started talking. 2 arrests followed shortly after, 11 years later. Next, there's Curtis Flowers, a man tried 6 times for the same crime, imprisoned for over 20 years. The podcast In the Dark exposed prosecutorial misconduct, biased jury selection, and new evidence. Their work led to public outrage, legal appeals, and eventually his release. One of the most haunting stories, Alyssa Turney. Her sister, Sarah Turney, started Voices for Justice, using TikTok, Instagram, and podcasting to keep Alyssa's case alive. That noise, it worked. Her stepfather was finally indicted in 2020. And of course, there's the OG, Serial, the case of Adnan Syed, convicted in 1999 for the murder of Hae Min Lee. exploded into public consciousness in 2014. The podcast raised serious doubts about the investigation, prompting appeals, re-examinations, and eventually Adnan's release in 2022. Let's take a deeper look at the story that made podcasting a legitimate force for justice. The case of Adnan Syed, as dissected by the now iconic podcast Serial. Back in 1999, Hae Min Lee was found murdered in Baltimore. Her ex-boyfriend Adnan was arrested, tried, and sentenced to life in prison. But in 2014, Serial dropped its first season, and it was like lighting a fuse under a powder keg. Journalist Sarah Koenig did more than tell a story. She questioned it. She examined witness timelines, scrutinized evidence, and brought forward Asia McClain, a potential alibi never properly contacted by Adnan's defense. The podcast cast doubt on key elements of the prosecution, including cell phone tower records that were later revealed to be unreliable. What made Serial revolutionary wasn't just the storytelling, it was the tone, uncertain, reflective, and honest about not having all the answers. That transparency sparked massive engagement. Listeners became researchers, legal experts offered pro bono reviews, law students ran mock retrials, social media exploded with theory threads, timelines, and digital reenactments. The ripples became tidal. Adnan was granted appeals, court hearings reopened, and in 2022, his sentence was vacated. Next up, let's explore a Southern mystery that haunted a small town for over a decade and how one podcaster cracked it wide open. In 2005, Tara Grinstead vanished without a trace. A teacher, former beauty queen, and local icon, her case baffled police. The trail went cold until 2016, when a filmmaker named Payne Lindsay decided to start a podcast called Up and Vanished. He wasn't a detective. He had no journalism degree. He just wanted to tell a story. But his interviews, deep dives into the case files, and fearless curiosity reignited the investigation. His podcast not only brought new attention, but also pressured locals to speak up. In 2017, Ryan Duke confessed to the murder, and Bo Dukes was arrested for helping cover it up. Without the podcast, this case might still be unsolved. Now, let's lift the hood on what makes these podcasts so powerful. It's more than just good narration. It's a formula of technique, timing, and heart. Deep research. The best hosts dig like forensic analysts, scouring court records, case files, obscure interviews, old newspaper clippings, even forgotten MySpace pages. Narrative craftsmanship. Great podcasts unfold like mystery novels. They hook you with questions, layer in characters, deliver cliffhangers, and leave you needing to know what's next. Community building. True crime is no longer passive. Podcasts encourage fan theories, data timelines shared through Reddit, TikTok, Discord, and Twitter. Empathy plus respect. These aren't just stories, they're people. Victims' names are never forgotten. Families are interviewed, never exploited. Immersive production. Creepy music, real courtroom clips, dramatized phone calls. It's like being in the room where it happened. Now, before we get too starry-eyed, we've got to talk ethics, because in the world of true crime podcasting, the line between helping and harming can get real blurry. This genre walks a fine line. These are not fictional characters. They're real people with real pain. When a podcast reopens a cold case, it also reopens emotional wounds. Families might be re-traumatized. Victims' dignity is sometimes lost in the thirst for storytelling. Then there's the issue of amateur sleuths. While crowdsourcing has solved crimes, it's also led to false accusations and public harassment of innocent people. The solution is integrity. Creators must fact-check relentlessly, respect victims, avoid clickbait, and know when to stop the tape. We're moving into an era of multi-sensory storytelling. Think AI-generated voice analysis, immersive 3D audio recreations, and even VR crime scenes that place listeners inside a reconstruction of the last known moments of a victim's life. Podcasts are becoming more than just audio. They're turning into interactive experiences. Tech-savvy hosts are integrating real-time tip lines, encrypted listener submissions, and machine learning to analyze case data. Expect more collaborations with law enforcement, legal advocates, and nonprofit organizations. Podcasts will directly influence outcomes and push policy change. And there you have it, a world where earbuds become evidence and curious minds help uncover truth in places long forgotten. We've seen how podcasts like Serial, Up and Vanished, and Voices for Justice have reshaped the justice system, cracked cold cases, and even helped free the innocent. True crime podcasts have gone from passive listening to active participation. And here at Curell Case Files, we believe that awareness is the first step toward justice. Whether you're a data junkie, an armchair detective, or just someone with a heart for the truth, you belong here. If today's episode lit a fire in your mind, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear the truth behind the noise. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the power of audio, community, and curiosity. This is Curell Case Files, where the unheard get heard and every mystery deserves a voice. Until next time, stay curious, stay careful, and stay tuned.